5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh. Oh no, that's right. That's right. So if I from what I understand about the various European economies, the UK, their comparative advantage is financial services, and their comparative disadvantage is stuff like manufacturing and even farming, possibly. Right? So like, you know, each country has relative advantages. Like Germany, for example, has a relative advantage in manufacturing, I believe. So these industries, like, you know, so when you integrate into the European economy, like the sectors where you have the advantage will make money because it's easier for them to do business with the other European countries. But the sectors where you have a disadvantage, because now you have one common market, you no longer have any protections against the other countries that have the relative advantage. So what this means is that joining the EU, for the UK specifically, it means that their banks and law services and all that will benefit significantly, whereas their manufacturing and possibly even their farmers will be disadvantaged unless they, I don't know, seriously improve their productivity somehow. And presumably, if you are a, I don't know, a factory worker, or you're a person who has like maybe like engineering experience in the UK, you would like go to Germany, take your expertise to Germany and work in the German manufacturing sector or something along those lines. I mean, that's how free trade works, right? Like your industries that are less competitive than other countries will just lose to the free trade, but then your industries that are better than the other countries will gain their businesses, then like their income. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And it's not entirely clear that the UK really did anything to help the industries that were on the losing side of the equation. I mean, certainly the banking institutions in the UK, I believe, did really well. 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2. Like, they did really well from joining the EU. And the people who voted against, or they voted for Brexit, were the people who were not bankers, pretty much. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And one of the other issues too is language, right? Because the Anglo-Saxons have been dominant in world culture for so long that, for example, you're perfectly fine with English, Wesley. Which is, I mean, that's good for you for being fluent in English. But it means, for example, like if you want to go to the UK to find a banking job, like you already know English, it's not a big deal for you. Whereas if some British people want to like move to Germany to get a factory job or something, they have to learn German, which they are not yet fluent in. Wesley says, I speak better English than French, and French is Belgium's second main language. Exactly, and this is like, In a way, you might think of this as the disadvantage of being the dominant culture in any place. I mean, you'd think, oh, I'm a dominant culture, this means it's good for me. It's not necessarily true that it is good for you, because in a way it makes you complacent, because, oh, I mean, I already know English, I don't need to learn other languages. And then like something like the EU happens, and the British people, the common people, find themselves unable to easily move to a different European country to get work, for example, right? I mean, imagine if like all the low tech or the cheap factory work is moving to Eastern Europe because that's where the cheap labor is. And you are a cheap laborer in the UK, and all of a sudden your factory has moved to Eastern European countries, and you're like, well, I could stay here and be unemployed, or I can just like move to Eastern Europe to follow the jobs or something. But then you have to learn a new language, and so that barrier becomes a difficulty. I mean, especially if you're poor in the first place, like what are you gonna do? Go take a few years and learn a new language? I mean, you don't have the money to begin with. 5-3, 5-3. All right, that's great. 3-3. I don't know if I've said it here. I guess I haven't said it here. But like, you know, free trade and globalization. Free trade means like the free movement of money, the free movement of goods. But so especially in the context of the European Union, it should also mean the free movement of people. But the language barrier is something that needs to be overcome if you want the free movement of people. Maybe the UK should have just given people like free language lessons so they can move to whichever country their jobs are. Or like free job training. You know, if you used to be in manufacturing in the UK and now your job's gone, well then free job training so you can move into the financial sector or something. But stuff like this, the rich people, they tend not to think about this stuff because they only see their own money. Like the bankers are making money and they're like, oh, well, I'm making money, I guess I'm fine. And then they don't like think about the other guys, the other sectors. And then of course the other sectors, because they're not making money, they vote to leave the EU. I mean, because people they're not that sophisticated, right? They're like, oh, I'm not making money, I guess I'm just gonna throw a spanner in the works. 1-3, 1-4, 1-5. Two 1 Acropolis, 2-2 Sentinel, 2-3 Canopy, 2-4 Ozymandias, 2-5 Folly, 3-1 Overlook, 3-2 Ambition, 3-3 Guardian, 3-4 Deepwood. And we can bring that point back to like the United States and China as well. So like more Chinese people know English than American people know Chinese. And so that just makes it easier for the Chinese to learn American things and harder for the Americans to learn Chinese things. Again, with this notion of a dominant culture, you know, like a Chinese person going to the US to get a job, it's not that hard. I mean, it's kind of hard, but it's not it's not as hard as, imagine a poor American factory worker going to China to find a factory job. I mean, if we were in a world of perfect globalization, that's what would happen. Like, you know, all the poor American factory workers who are losing jobs would just go to China to work in Chinese factories. But we are not in this perfect globalized world. There are still barriers to this degree of movement of labor. 5-3. Wait, 5-2. Alright, Wesley. Wesley says we're not really. Go on. 5-2. Twin Town. Because there's way more people in China already. No, but sure, there are. And the minimum wage is way lower. But here's the thing. If you are working in China, you're living in China and working in China, you're not any worse off than the other Chinese workers. Logically. Like, you'll be living the same way as the other Chinese workers. Yeah, the wages are lower in China, but the cost of living is also lower. Although you can also say the quality of life is also lower. 2-5. But you'll be... But I guess job availability is lower though. Would it be? I mean, here's the thing, right? In a perfect world, assuming there's no language barrier, assuming there's no racism, your conditions would not be any worse than the other Chinese workers. But of course there is language barrier and cultural barrier and racism. So in reality, it's significantly worse than in theory. With 1.4 billion already in China, I can hardly find a job in Belgium with 10 million. Yeah, no, but that's because... that's because not the entire world is buying stuff from you. I mean, China... Okay, let's look this up. Unemployment rate. Unemployment rate China is what, above 4%? Just above 4% over the last decade. 2002 to 2018. Okay, well, it's been about 4%, but it's dropped to 3.89 recently. So it's about 4%. Unemployment rate Belgium. Unemployment rate Belgium is about 6.4%. So 4% China, 6.4 Belgium. Germany is 3.5. So presumably if you like move to Germany, you have a slightly better chance of finding a job. Alright, so this is the backward station. But you know, this is the point I'm trying to get to, is that time to freshen up your German indeed. The point I'm making is that, you know, in a perfectly globalized world, or even like in a perfectly integrated EU, you would just do that. Like, if because of the freedom of movement, what that in theory allows is that you could just go to wherever the jobs are and find employment there, in theory. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Actually, let me look up the UK. Unemployment rate UK is 4.1. It's not that bad. Wesley says, yeah, I guess in that aspect it would make sense. I mean, it's the theory. That's the theory. But as we were saying, like, you know, when's the last time a poor UK factory worker moved to Germany to find a job in a German factory? It turns out that moving around is still much easier for rich people than for poor people. Two, three, four, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 2, 3, 4, and 5. Does the EU have like active training programs for stuff like this? Here's the thing, look, if I were a globalist, which I kind of am, even though I'm not a rich corporation, but does the EU like have public funding for teaching languages and moving people to where the jobs are? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Because that would make sense to me. Like, that's the kind of thing that I think the EU should do. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, not that you know of. Exactly, like you don't... I haven't heard about anything like that. But if you want like European integration, then like you need to address these barriers, language barriers, and any barriers to people moving around Europe. You know what I mean? 1, 2, 3. Here in Belgium, you learn Dutch, French, and English no matter what you do. Okay, I mean that's a good start. That's a good start. And maybe if you add German to that, and so you have like 4 languages. And German, Spanish, if you choose, exactly, so 5 languages. So, I mean, that's a good start. So if it's like a 1, 2, 3, 4, I mean, it positions you better for the European economy, right? Because as we said, like if you know German and Spanish as well, then you literally can just move to wherever the jobs are. I don't suppose Europeans want to have like a unified language, a single language. I think Europeans seem to be a little bit less enthusiastic about that prospect. Two, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. One, 2, 3, 4. Well, not anytime soon, at least. 2, 3, 4. Or at least like adopt one of the languages as universal, although again it doesn't seem like the Europeans want to do that. 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.